Hi, this video is designed to help you understand the 7 principles of digital business strategy. The 7 principles of digital business strategy have been used to create the strategy for your business. We look upon the 7 principles of digital business strategy as business strategy through the lens of digital. It doesn't mean that we have to get involved in great detail on digital tactics. It is as much to do with culture and how a business operates and how we are going to progress our business in a digital age as it is to do with Facebook or Twitter. So the ground rules to this are quite simple. We must take the assumption that the business is going into the digital age and wants to participate as a digital company. We want to use evidence and data to help us in our decision making. And as we go through the process, you will see that there are many forces that are calculable that will give us direction. This is different from other strategic models. Many strategic models, even SWOT analysis, can end up having many variants and outcomes dependent on who's created them. They don't give direction. They don't actually tell us what it is that we should be doing if we're to progress our business. The 7 principles of digital business strategy does deliver this. And that's what's in your strategy video. So let's take a look at the 7 principles and how they work. The 7 principles of digital business strategy break down into 3 subsections. The first section we refer to as microanalysis. Microanalysis gives a good insight into our business, what it is that we're trying to achieve, if it's achievable, and how we are going to achieve it. The second is macroanalysis, and macroanalysis is where our business fits into the greater context on the web and from a digital perspective against competitors, and what moves and plays we should be making if we are planning to succeed or to play out a directed path. The third section is tactics, and tactical excellence comes from delivering upon the strategic ambition. And that's where we'll start, strategic ambition. Microanalysis takes the first 4 principles, which are know yourself, customer data dynamics, digital marketplace dynamics, and resources. As you can see from this diagram, all 4 of these principles overlap. That means we can't consider what our ambition is without understanding the customers. And we can't understand what the customer wants without looking at the supply in the marketplace. Who have we to beat? Who is already supplying? What is their ambition? And what resources have they already ploughed in to achieving their ambition? We have to then understand our own resources. Smaller businesses need more cash, but actually have time. Larger businesses need more time, but actually have cash. I didn't make up the rules. Let's now take a look at the first one. Know yourself. Know yourself breaks into 2 separate functions. The first one is ambition. Ambition is different from a company's mission, values, or vision. Your vision is where you want to go in the long term. The mission is why you exist, and the values demonstrates the culture in which you will operate. We're talking here about strategic ambition. Strategy is a short-term plan to achieve specific goals and to give directions to individuals to allow them to complete tactical actions to achieve this ambition. So the digital business strategy can change, our ambitions will change as we achieve our goals, and the strategy is for the short term, usually 6 to 12 months. When we consider our ambition, we have to understand that it may change as we go through the cycle of understanding the 7 principles. When the ambition makes contact with competitive forces, we may actually change our ambition. Unique value proposition is an articulation in words of where we're able to describe the customer's problem, the solution we have to fix that problem, and the value that the customer gains from working with us to help resolve their difficulties. Again, the value proposition will change when we go through the process, when it makes contact with understanding if there's demand for what it is that we're selling, and if there's supply already in the marketplace, and if we've the resources to deliver upon it. So, while it's principle number one, quite often we have to revisit it at the end of the continual process of making strategy. Number two is customer data dynamics. In the digital world, we have data galore. We have Google AdWords, our own analytics, our social analytics. We have open source data sets. We've any amount of data that's teeming towards us. The challenge that we have is making sense or use of it. The only way to make use of data is to actually pose a question to that data. It's like opening a spreadsheet and trying to make sense of what it means. If someone says that it's a set of accounts, now it starts to make sense. If someone asks a question, is this business well enough capitalized? The numbers magically pop out the answer. The same is true when we look at customer data dynamics. And the question that we always want to ask is there demand in the marketplace for our value proposition, for what it is that we're trying to sell? If there is no demand, then it's likely that we're creating innovations, something we'll talk about later in this video. If there is demand, well, how heavily contested is it? Are we able to capture some of that demand? Is our value proposition going to be unique enough to be able to garnish and achieve our objectives and our ambition? Number three is digital marketplace dynamics. Again, using data sets, we can see who the competitive forces are when dealing in a digital world. In our offline world, we're typically bound by geography and the competitors that reside within that geography. In the online world, it's somewhat different. Geographies are broken down and people look with tasks to achieve specific roles. This makes a mockery of trying to split up customers into demographics by age or by how they act. They have tasks. And in the marketplace, we need to compare ourselves against others who help customers complete those tasks. If they are heavyweight competitors, have we the ability to outflank them? Or do we have to go head to head? Which, if we have to go head to head and they are heavyweight competitors and we are not, it does call upon our resources. Do we have the resources? When we examine the resources, which is number 4, we tend to break this down into 3 elements: time, talent, and cash. Small businesses are usually time rich and cash poor, while larger businesses are cash rich and time poor. Many businesses that want to take one of the chosen paths, which we'll see in a moment, require unique talents. So if we are to be strategic in our choices, we either have to get the talents and resources required to match the play, or we have to choose a play that matches our talents. And as we'll see in 5 and 6, those are revealed as we go through by understanding the marketplace, understanding the customer data dynamics, and making our ambition and our value proposition adjust so that we find the sweet spot in the middle of this Venn diagram. Now on to position 5 and 6. Macro analysis, understanding where our business fits in the broader scheme of things. To be able to plot ourselves with a position, we must first understand the quadrant, the axis of the quadrant, and lens locking. Lens locking is quite straightforward. We just have to take a perspective. When we're viewing where we are right now, are we doing it within inside our own industry or an industry we intend to move into? Let's just define it so that the quadrant makes more sense. Now we have the x-axis. X-axis starts with exclusive. If you know the names and addresses and contact details of the individuals you're trying to sell to, then that's an exclusive audience. If you're a niche, that means there's a geographic parameter that you can clearly define, then that's your niche. It can also be a niche that is defined within specific parameters, such as we want to sell train sets to trains enthusiasts, and they could be in any geography. When we move towards mainstream markets, tends to enter into more consumer markets or into a broader perspective. We're moving from our niche, we want to broaden out into new territories or into new perspectives. And mass market at the very end is purely a consumer product. You want to be on the shelves of Walmart. We want to be sold through Amazon. We want distribution. We want to reach anybody who happens to have this challenge that we solve. On the y-axis, we start with the customer's perspective and perceptions of us. Now, many businesses don't like where they get plotted at this point because they believe cold and rational at the bottom has negative implications. It doesn't. Many energy companies actually have a cold relationship with their customers. The customer will buy the cheapest price and are driven by price, and that's usually a good characteristic of a cold business. Next, we have mild, where the relationship is based around price and price plays a heavy part, but so too do relationships and a better understanding of the business. Then we move up into brand space, where we're perceived as warm, we are the trusted provider. And lastly, we have hot. Customers will pay anything for a product within reason at this point. So an Apple iPhone or an iPad may retail at $600, but cost of manufacture is $105. How come a product that is in a heavily contested marketplace can gain such margins? It's hot. Most businesses like to think that they have a warm relationship with their customers. But as we'll see as the quadrant progresses, that to become a brand and to be a digitally warm brand, we must have a lot of earned media. That means most of the traffic coming to our website is evidenced in our analytics as coming through referral traffic or social media. If we don't have that kind of traffic, it's unlikely that we are the authority, the blue square. It's much more likely that we've built our business through advocacy, this yellow square. And that's where most businesses start, as they change or transform from being a business that does digital into being a digital business. Inside the square of advocacy, we tend to find that most business still comes from other traditional methods, and that the business has a sales force in which it uses to convert most of its business. The transactions of online are only there to support the business. They rarely bring in lots of new business. So the business has a challenge or a choice to make. Inside the yellow square, whilst it's still good and secure for building small businesses over time, it doesn't offer the accelerated growth that many fast-growing digital businesses experience. So the business has a choice to make. That's its position, it's number 5. It now needs to choose its engine of growth. Where does it go from here? The business can grow from advocacy into attention, which is this sideways move. Attention, however, requires different resources than advocacy. Advocacy requires a lot of time, where we send email newsletters and we use social media to support the customer base that we have and build it organically over time. Attention tends to be around bought media. This is pay-per-click advertising, remarketing. They tend to be the stronger tactical plays that are going on the right-hand side. Now, if the business is cold and in the attention area, it has no reason to perform social media marketing. Why? Because the customer has no reason to tweet or to Facebook. Customers don't get up in the morning and go, "Dear electricity provider, thank you for the wonderful electricity." They then just use it in their own context, which tends to become a complaints forum. But there are better complaints forums. Handling the complaints through social media doesn't increase brand warmth. So whilst these very profitable businesses can sit in cold, quite often they misunderstand the tactics that relate to this area. This is why it's crucial that we use position number 5 is diagnosed correctly now, at the start. So if the business makes a play to move from advocacy to attention, it really has to have the resources of cash. when we're looking at businesses that are in the attention quadrant, they tend to be scientifically managed. What is our cost per acquisition? Our lifetime value of our customers? When they're in advocacy, they tend to be driven much more around growing and maintaining existing business. An alternative way to grow is to go up north into becoming an authority. As we mentioned earlier, authority is about earned media. If you want to be the authority, all your peers have to point at you and go, this is good, and here's the reason why. If that is missing from our analytics and from our data, it's highly likely we are not a digital authority. It doesn't mean that we're not good in our own field. It doesn't mean that we're not market leader. It just means that from a digital business strategy perspective, we haven't achieved the outcomes that we want. Above the x-axis gets disproportionate amounts of attention than if you're below the x-axis. Businesses that are authority or prime tend to get substantially more brand-based search and much higher conversion than businesses that are in advocacy or attention. So our goal is usually to move up, to move from cold or mild into warm and hot. To move up, however, requires innovation. Now, we're not going to get into the detail of how we define innovation, but it is the new, it is the exciting that intrigues customers. Marketing becomes substantially easier when a business is overflowing with innovation. It's able to move up and challenge the prime players who are the 800-pound gorillas in the room through innovation and continuous cycles of innovation where new customers prefer the new solution than the old. Prime businesses, as we've described as the big players in any particular market, have two challenges. They're seeing attacks coming from beneath, which is attention-driven businesses who are paying for advertising to create brand awareness, and they're seeing the innovators coming from the other side of the square. Quite often what happens is prime businesses try to soak the channels of attention to ensure that it becomes costly to advertise, and they look for acquisition opportunities or partnership opportunities that could come from the attention, the new players and the new innovations. Equally, they can also try to innovate themselves and continuously change and evolve. That's systematic and a part of being a digital business. So, as we can see, dependent upon the play, where the starting point is, of which there are 8, and where we choose to go to, this has a profound effect on our resources, our value proposition, ensuring that it's unique. We need to understand if there's customer demand, and if there's not, how are we going to create it? And we need to also understand how heavyweight the marketplace competitors are going to be before we choose the route that we're going to take. It all sounds a little bit confusing, but as you take these actors onto the stage one at a time and deal with them one at a time, the strategy starts to evolve. Here's a typical growth profile dependent on the quadrant you end up in. We can see the yellow line for advocacy has slow growth. And it's fine if slow growth is what you want and stability is what is needed. We can see that the purple line, which represents attention, has staggered growth. When we're paying, we grow. When we're not paying, the business tends to decline and the sales opportunities decrease. If we have used innovation and become thought leaders, we'll see that there's usually perpetual steady growth as we become the authority in our industry. This path can usually take a couple of years to achieve, again dependent on competitive forces and customer uptake. And then there's the prime position. These are the lucky chaps who get disproportionately more attention because they have built up a brand in this space. Last but by no means least, we have tactical excellence. All good strategies require that the tactics rolled out support the strategic ambition and the value proposition. Whilst we haven't gone into the depths of how we select the tactics, we can see that the quadrants that we move from and to determine the tactics. If we're going to stay in advocacy, certainly email marketing is at the fore and our own social media. If we're going to move into authority, then we need to get into content marketing, syndication, and building up social media through other people's referrals becomes essential. If we're going to go across into attention, then we're going to have to certainly look at pay-per-click advertising and understanding if we can create a scientific formula that is going to lead to profit. And if we're the prime players, well, we're going to have fingers in lots of pies. The tactical excellence is the make or break point if a strategy is to be successful. The tactical work that we plan to do has to be linked with projects. The projects have to answer significant questions raised in the mile markers. Mile markers are the mile markers that will take us on our strategic journey. So whilst senior management typically come up with mile markers, it's really down to the operations of the business to deliver projects using tactics that help answer the strategic questions. It can't be expressed enough. The tacticians make or break the strategy. So that's the overview of the 7 principles of digital business strategy. This is what we've used to help create your digital business strategy. And I hope that you enjoy finding out a little bit more about how your business is going to apply these 7 principles and execute upon the strategic ambition and value proposition.